Funky Politics.
Funky Politics Show.
Funky Politics.
Funky Politics.
Funky Politics.
Funky Politics. Powered by MLGW. Memphis Light Gas and Water.
Keeping it real, right, and funky. Funky Politics. Politics.
When I came home last night, you wouldn't make love to me.
You're listening to Funky Politics, powered by the KUDZUKIAN Network. I am DC, one of the hosts of this program, sitting alongside my good friend, Doc Ward. Doc, what's up?
Man, mad funky shout out to our number one brand new employee. I don't know his whole name.
What's his first name?
But I know him as Jerron.
I heard that name somewhere before.
For you Funky Politics faithful out there, you're going to be hearing from Jerron because we're not just going to let him come and get coffee for us like they do at the White House.
No.
He's going to be on the mic. We're going to let him get on the mic, and we're going to maybe. I don't know.
You think we can get him in town? He's spending a lot of time. He's spending a lot of time in Washington right now.
He's a virtual employee, so we don't want to spend that much money. Okay. You know what I mean?
We'll have him call in. We'll have him call into the show, and we'll have Jerron right here on Funky Politics.
Right here, so you can just dial Jerron on Funky Politics.
Hey, but before we get Jerron on, let's run into this thing right here.
Yeah.
If we have a president that gets up in the morning about 5 and tweets it, but he never comes down to the office until 11, is that like part-time work for him or something? I'm not understanding that.
Oh, yeah, we done come down to 11 o'clock?
Yeah, 11 o'clock.
Because he can't get out the bed.
So he's tweeting from 5 to
yeah. He just can't get out the bed, man. It's not like, well, I don't know what he's doing, but I know what he's doing.
Comb over.
I know what he's doing. Comb over. But I know what he's doing. He's not telling the truth. Because they say he told the truth, he doesn't tell the truth like 8,000 times or something like that.
Well, the truth is not true.
That's like a lie a day.
The truth is really not true.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Truth
anyway.
Not true. Alternative facts.
I know something that's not alternative.
What's that?
Dr. Dorothy Brown.
Tell me about it.
Emory University, law professor, a national political analyst, an author who's going to be published here very soon. The Whiteness of Wealth, I think it's what it's called by Crown Publishing. So look out for that deal.
And what else is she?
And she's just an overall great Atlantean too, by the way.
But she's a guest right here on Funky Politics.
That's right.
And if you all stay tuned, which I know you will.
Yes.
You hear us break down the tax code, the fiscal policy, and a whole lot of other things with Dr. Dorothy Brown, Emory University, coming up right here on Funky Politics.
Powered by the KUDZUKIAN Network.
Give it to me. Give me that stuff, that funk, that sweet, that funky stuff. Give it to me. Give me that stuff, that funk, that sweet, that funky stuff. Give it to me. Give it to me. Give it to me. Give it to me. Give me that stuff, that sweet, funky stuff.
We're getting funky, y'all.
33% of Americans have a college degree. 43% of Africans in this country have a college degree. These are African immigrants that are coming into this country. They didn't have the opportunity and access, but they came over here in this American dream and created within this framework the opportunity that this country was set up, the ideal it was set on. And now to say that these people, because the disparaging remark goes further than just hole.
It's Funky Politics on the KUDZUKIAN Network.
KUDZUKIAN!
We got the funk. Funky Politics on the KUDZUKIAN Network.
You're listening to Funky Politics, powered by the KUDZUKIAN Network. I am DC, one of the hosts of this wonderful program, sitting alongside my good friend, Doc Ward. Doc, how are you, sir?
Man, I'm funky than pig's feet without the pickle.
Now, that's some funky stuff.
Ain't it?
Pig's feet? Where do you get these things from? Is there like a book or something?
Where do you get pig's feet from?
No, whatever.
From the store. They come in a jar, when you sit up the front, and you can't get them everywhere. You got to be in a certain community.
You got to have some hot sauce with them pig. We're not talking about pig. Today,
what are we talking about today?
We've got one of the finest political analysts around the world with us today, and also a professor of law at the Emory School of Law out of Atlanta, Georgia, of course, and that is the one and only Dr. Dorothy Brown. How are you, Dr. Brown?
I'm fine. Thank you so much for having me on.
We are welcoming you to Funky Politics. So feel comfortable to kind of kick your shoes off a little bit, and we like to get a little funky on this show. Funky on this show.
And thank you so much for being on. So let's just jump right into it.
Jump on in it, brother.
Jump on in it. Because I've been wanting to ask you something ever since we knew that you were going to come and grace us with your presence. Because I hear...
Wait, hold on. Is she related to Shirley Brown, the singer, blues singer out of Memphis?
You have to ask her that.
Okay.
Not that I know of.
Darn, I bet you are, though. Go ahead.
She's not related to the blues singer, but we're about to get some rhythm here, because here's what I want to ask. The tax code, now, that has just been passed, or the revisions, rather, the tax code, have been touted as the panacea to all that is financial. It is the key to our financial success. It puts money in the pockets of the middle class. It puts opportunities for wealth creation in the pockets of the upper class. It puts tax breaks and all types of opportunities for more manufacturing in the pockets of the companies. And everybody, whether you make $5 an hour or $5 million an hour, is going to be happy because we have this tax code that is the brainchild of one Donald John Trump. I need to know, is it live or is it Memorex? Is it real or is it funky?
Dr. Brown, hold on. He just said brainchild. Now, is it possible?
I know. He's stretching it,
No,
right?
no. Come on now. Let's get his brother here.
That's what he said.
I'm gonna get a man some due now. But do you put brain in a conversation with? I call him Coke 45 sometimes.
Yes, because everybody has a brain. Everybody has a brain, so you got to put it in
STEM. They have a STEM. But go ahead, Doc.
Okay.
You got it.
I want to know: is it live? Is it real or is it funky? Tell us right now.
It's real if you are rich. It's real if you are a white, typical investor owning shares of stock so that the corporate tax cut winds up in your pocket. It is not real if you're working class. It is not real if you're African American, who we are less likely to own stocks than whites. So it's not real. It's not real depending on who you are. So anything that's based around the corporate tax cut, which is what this was, is designed to put money in the hands of white shareholders.
Now, I think I heard a little piece in there where you said if you're African American.
Yes.
And you're right. There are some of us that don't play the markets. We're not heavily invested, and as a matter of fact, the biggest investment we had, Doc, was, as you well know, before the 09 bubble, 08-09 bubble, was our homes, right?
Well, that's
Correct.
most Americans, period.
But I'm talking about us in terms of true wealth building.
If you have
that was pretty much it for us, and
Correct.
And once that thing hit us in the knee, kicked us in the knee, so to speak. Now we get a president here, 8 years later, a little bit over 8 or 9 years later, and he says that this tax cut, it's going to do this. Now, I will say this: the markets have increased, but was it because of this change in the tax code?
No, of course not. The market under President Obama had been increasing. So no, Trump inherited a very healthy economy and miraculously hasn't managed to screw it up. Wait for it yet.
No,
is there any opportunity? Is it that he hasn't screwed it up, or is it just
he hasn't screwed it up?
Or is it just
I
that
said it? I mean it. I'll say it again.
Or is it just that the institution of finance has held steady because they don't want to screw it up? And
no, he hasn't managed to screw it up. Did I stutter?
No. You made it clear. I know you don't work for no federal government agency. We know this.
No, I am a tenured law professor.
Praise
Thank
the law.
God.
Praise the law for tenure.
And not aspiring to work for government either.
No, apparently.
You are correct.
Yeah. So then in that case, if it's not all that it's cracked up to be for the middle class, then how is it that this group can continue to market it as such? And because everyone seems to be saying, and I'm going to preface it by saying this, everyone seems to be saying with all the things that the president has done, all of the division that his rhetoric has created, and all of the uproar that his antics have created, people are still going to approve him because most voters care about the economy. They care about the tax cuts. They care about unemployment
but
reduction.
Actually, I've seen polling data that suggests most Americans aren't necessarily on board with thinking that of the tax plan. So the fact that the Republicans are saying it doesn't necessarily mean that Republicans are buying it.
Wow. So how is it that they continue to go on with it? How did they feel like this was going to last them at least until the midterm elections as something that would carry them over as responsible fiscal policy for Americans?
Hold on 1 second there, Dr. Brown. Hold on. You're listening to Funky Politics, powered by the KUDZUKIAN Network. Go ahead, Doc.
Actually, I don't think they do think that. I think they're trying to figure out what their midterm strategy is. So I don't think that they're necessarily decided. In fact, I think the polling data has suggested that maybe they don't put all their eggs in the tax cut basket, that maybe they put it in the we need to put more conservative judges on the bench, that maybe that's the strategy, or maybe the strategy is an anti-immigration that riles up the base. So they're trying to figure out what their message is for the midterm.
Sister,
and I don't think they're putting all their horses on the tax cut.
And and Doc, I agree with you on that because at first when it passed, the party was told we are literally going to run on this middle class
They
tax
thought it was
cut.
great. They all got on a bus and traveled 2 miles down the street. And had a party.
McLean, Virginia.
No, literally. No, it's like they went from one place that they probably could have taken an orange line to get to, and then they went and they partied like this was the greatest piece of legislation that had been passed since the Constitution.
Because that's what they were trying to sell. Bless their hearts. That's what they were trying to sell, and what they've seen is it's not being received that way. Right. Because people are seeing, okay, 2018 rolled around, the tax cuts hit, and they're like, how much more money did I get in my paycheck? And if you're really paying attention, you're learning that some people who got more money after taxes are going to wind up with a tax bill. Yeah, that the withholding tables aren't going to help them out.
Well, now let's go to that withholding table, because now I got to agree. I think there were some areas where he did do some tax. Now it's gonna help those high earners like Doc Ward, who makes, I don't want to say how much money he makes.
You don't want to tell his business.
Well, I'm not gonna say that. I'm not gonna tell the world that he makes $500,000 a year. I'm not gonna say that.
But that doesn't mean I don't sympathize with the little guys like you.
Doc, hey,
that's
look,
what they all say.
That's what funky politics is all about. Well, let me say. So he did cut the tax rate table. Did he not do it?
Absolutely. He totally did. But here's the problem. Sure. He also cut a lot of deductions. You used to be able to take them, but you can't take them now.
What are some of those that the middle class?
The biggest one was the maximum state and local income taxes and real property taxes you can take are $10,000. You used to be able to take them unlimited.
Right.
So the fact that in exchange for the tax rate cut, they increased what's called the standard deduction amount.
Wow.
And the presumption is people who used to itemize their deductions, who used to list their deductions on a specific schedule, won't do that anymore. They'll just take the standard deduction amount. However, they may wind up paying more taxes because their withholding has been adjusted, but for them, in their individual tax circumstances, was adjusted too much.
So now this year, let's just say 18, they're gonna feel the actual breadth and the width of the tax cut for this year come 19 when we file by
in April
correct?
Of 19 when they file their tax returns.
And so we'll know how well this thing worked for the Doc Wards of the world, and it's going to work well for him because he's in $500,000.
Well, he knows how it works because he's accountants and tax lawyers on demand, so he knows what his tax bill is.
There you go.
Wow.
There you go. But still, I mean, I don't appreciate having to support you guys that don't go out and find gainful employment so that you can be like.
But we're trying. That's why Emory
don't dislike me.
That's why Emory's keeping a tenured position for her, and I'm just still out here looking for one. But I think that misnomer out there, and I don't think it's gotten down to the little guy. And I hate to say the term little guy, but the average tax, the tax person in this country. I mean, you're looking at anywhere 35 to 45, 48,000. These folks. If they got another equal earner in the home with about that same thing, and they've got a nice, let's say $150,000 house, and they live in a state that's got a state income tax, it's going to hurt them.
You're going to be
absolutely, positively, and
it's going to hurt the people that were supporting him.
Oh, that's absolutely true. So there's a little cognitive dissonance, but I will say I think the lack of uniform support in the polling data for this tax bill suggests that some of those people have figured it out.
Well, let's jump to another subject because I don't want to, like a better term, beat a dead horse. Yeah. I'm not calling the president a dead horse.
No, you're calling his tax plan a dead horse.
Oh,
yes.
Because at the end of the day, also there's a deferment of the deficit amongst other things too, isn't there?
Yep.
And when that starts to come back on, you get ready.
And the president just announced today that he wasn't going to put in the automatic raise for federal workers.
Oh, I saw that.
Right. That's actually the COLA increase, isn't it?
Yeah.
And as a former,
why didn't think he could stop that?
Well, I want to straighten this one thing out as a former federal employee. Because people used to say, we're getting a raise. We're getting our raises.
Yes.
I tell people all the time, that's not a raise. That's a cost of living adjustment.
Yeah.
It basically means that the price of bread was $1 last year. Yeah. It's going up to $1.03. So your salary is being adjusted so you can pay for today's prices. I mean, today's food with today's money.
Yeah.
Other government entities who I've worked for, and I will leave them nameless, go years without that COLA increase. And what that means is that you will have employees that are not making sufficient wages and salary to cover the cost of goods and services for today. So COLA increases are absolutely necessary. And as you said, the president said, how much was it, $25 billion that it would cost?
Yeah, he said $25 billion.
And he said that the budget could not support it.
Yeah,
So-
the budget the deficit that's been blown by this tax act.
Right. So how in the world can they at all say that this tax act was legitimate when now the budget comes around, cost of living adjustment comes around, and he can't even make that payment for federal workers? Now you've got a bunch of federal workers that are going to be paying for tomorrow's prices with yesterday's money.
That's right. That's absolutely right.
How is that at all legitimate as we go into the midterms?
Or equitable.
Yeah, is the tax plan even legitimate now? When we know we can't even make budget?
It wasn't legitimate then. It's not legitimate now.
But they can't even argue it.
Well, of course they can, because one of the things we've seen is they argue lots of nonsense.
Sure.
Right?
Oh, yeah,
that's
right.
part of the Trump campaign and presidency.
Yeah.
That things that you would have thought would never have come out of people's mouths come out of it in a really serious manner. So, of course, they can argue it.
I want to jump to this, Doc.
Yeah.
How important in this vast economy that we have in America now, how important is it for black entrepreneurship at this particular time? You know, black businesses to really take off. And do you think, just in your estimation, has the tax cut in and of itself helped spur growth in that particular sector? When it comes to, and I don't want to call it minority business because I'm tired of folks using that term. I'm talking about black businesses.
Right.
I can't speak for them women over there.
If you're in
business.
Atlanta, it's not minority business. If you're in Memphis, Tennessee, it's not minority business because you're not in the minority.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
So the question is, how are these businesses operated? Right? If they're operated as corporations,
Yes.
they're going to benefit from a tax cut. If they're operated different, so it's possible. But what really you hear off people talking about with black businesses is this is the way to fix the black-white racial wealth gap. And it really isn't, because the amount of money that flows through black businesses is so small compared to what flows through white businesses. So, buying black, buying Latino, buying Asian American, that's all good, but that's a really small segment of the market.
So an S corp versus an LLC that I have at this point. So am I going to see any measure of success, additional success, or maybe a cut in my taxes if I've got
Wait
this LLC?
for it. It depends.
Did you say wait for it or wait forest?
Wait for it.
Wow.
The answer is it depends.
It depends.
Right? So it depends because they have this, the tax bill has this 20% tax cut for pass-through entities like LLCs. However,
or the Trump
you have to jump through a lot of hoops.
Or the Trump organization, which is also a pass-through organization.
Well, we didn't want to go there, but
which is why I said it depends.
well, you know what? I'll sit around and I'll wait. But you know what? This has been a heck of a conversation we've had with you.
But just call on Doc's tax lawyers and accountants he's got on staff.
There you go.
Hey, look, how do you know he's got some? And he does have plenty, by the way.
But you'll have to pay for them because remember, the game is to be sold, not told.
Whatever. You're listening to Funky Politics, where we're having a great conversation with Dr. Dorothy Brown out of Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia, right here on the KUDZUKIAN Network, powered by the KUDZUKIAN Network.
DC and Doc Ward on Funky Politics.
Powered by Memphis Light Gas and Water.
Riffin' on Jazz.
I'm Howard Robertson, one of your hosts for Riffin' on Jazz. Riffin' is your weekly visit with friends where we dive all in to that classic African-American art form called jazz. So don't miss Riffin' with me and my man Melvin Massey every week on your favorite broadcast and podcast platforms.
Riffin' on Jazz on the KUDZUKIAN Network. KUDZUKIAN!
Keeping it real, right, and funky. Funky politics. 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 Politics.
Just got paid. It's Friday night. Party hard. Feeling right.
You're listening to Funky Politics, powered by the KUDZUKIAN Network. We're back with you, Doc Ward, myself, DC, and we are having a great conversation with Dr. Dorothy Brown, law professor out of the Emory University.
Come on, man. Come on.
I know.
Untie your tongue.
Untie my tongue. Emory University.
There you go.
A
Say that
national
3 times
political
back.
analyst. I'm not going to say that all that many times. Dr. Brown, we were
Yes.
talking a little bit before about how our economy is supposedly picked up according to what we're hearing out of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue.
Yes.
But let's talk about right now what we see as boots on the ground. And that is actual jobs and what is happening in the economy now. For those of us that I look at every day when I get up in the morning, I look in the mirror and I see an African American male. And are we at this point now where the economy's picked up so well that black unemployment is on the upswing, as the president says?
So, it's true that the black unemployment numbers are as low as we've seen them in quite a while. But what that misses is the fact that, for example, the unemployment rate for black college graduates, it's twice the unemployment rate of white college graduates. So the fact that it may be lower than it's been doesn't really respond to the fact that there are still big black-white differences.
Right. I mean, it's like less than zero. If you're at the
Yeah.
bottom, you can't go anywhere but up. But I want
Right.
to step back a little bit because
Sure.
I want to really get some context here, and so people can understand how much of the success, the financial success, fiscal success of this administration as it relates to unemployment, as it relates to wages and the like, even though we know we don't have the same success on wages, how much of that can really be attributed to the previous administration's foundation that they laid during the recession, and how
I
much
think
of that has come along just
I think
now?
virtually all of it. Unlike President Obama, President Obama inherited a nightmare of an economy
Oh, no
and
doubt.
righted the ship, and
Yeah.
the stock market bounded back. Trump inherited a booming economy, and has managed not to screw it up.
But isn't that kind of, that's what the conservatives are saying out there. They're saying, well, the last president, he left us okay, but let me tell you something. Hold on. Well, yes, they are.
I've
Because
never heard any of
this is what they're saying. When President Obama left, the markets are where? They weren't anywhere near, 3,200 or something like that. But now, I mean, they're in the, for some of us, they're in the stratosphere right now, right, Doc? I mean, we've never seen 8,000.
They're higher than it was, but
Sure.
but he left us with a really good market. And
Right.
yes, it's gone higher, but if he had been sitting in the chair, the market would have gone higher. Whoever sat in that chair, the market was going to do what the market did. Again, assuming the person who sat in that chair, wait for it, doesn't screw it up.
I hear you say doesn't screw it up a lot with this president here.
Yeah, because you just never know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
You can't.
That's right.
You really can't
what
say.
he's going to say that's going to make the markets jittery.
So if someone were to say, for sake of argument,
Yeah.
that the success of this administration is the fiscal success, well, I think that's the only thing they can even try to say. Well, anyway, the fiscal success of this administration is based on the work that's been done between 2009 and 2016. How far does that statement go? Is that still relevant right now, today?
Sure.
Or has that
it's-
faded away
it's
some
like
and now we're
inheriting
seeing-
$1 million. Are you better off with $1 million or zero?
And
Right?
then-
Yeah,
You're
that's
better
true.
off inheriting a really strong economy than inheriting one that President Obama did.
And you're still spending the interest on it now.
Literally.
Yeah.
As long as you don't screw it up, you're going to have a good economy. But
Yeah.
but now, see, you say screw it up, but hypothetically, but yet in a probable
Like getting in a
standpoint.
trade war.
Yeah, well, I
That
was
could
going to
screw
say
it up.
how can he screw this up? How can he really?
Well,
I think he's working on it.
He is, because there's this, tariff trade war, and as a result, farmers are hurting, and Congress wound up, I don't know how many billions of dollars they're now paying to farmers because they screwed up the tariff. I mean, that could it happened in that area. It could happen in many others. It is happening in many others.
Let me ask you.
But
I
that was
want
a
to go to some
one-time.
fiscal policy.
That's supposed to be a one-time subsidy to the
$16
farmers.
billion, I think it was.
Right.
Well,
16 billion.
If
Right.
the tariff continues, it'll have to be more than one time.
But we just sat down. He just sat down with Mexico, and worked out
The
half of
NAFTA
half of their impression of NAFTA. We understand that it has to go through Congress.
Sure.
It also has to go through Canada,
Sure.
or there's just going to be two separate agreements, and there's going to be revision. So we still have some work to do, but solving that will at least help us to some degree, right?
We don't know what that's going to look like.
Yeah.
So I'm not commenting on what it's going to look like, because heaven only knows what it could look like, right? They could not get an agreement. Let's put it this way. I believe Trump's last meeting with the Mexican president did not go so well.
No.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I know the one that he just recently had. I know they had phone problems. They had worse phone problems.
It was more than that.
Yeah, can you hear me now and all that. They had worse phone problems than we have here at Funky Politics. but I know they have those issues. But I guess from my standpoint, and I know he's got a good economy, so he has the ability to do things like start trade wars and think about trade, because he doesn't have to think about the regular things, at least as far as people, wages and the like, which he should really be thinking about because wages are still flat. But I guess from my standpoint, I'm thinking, what is it now that he could, other than the trade war, what else could he possibly do to screw this up?
You know, I try to spend a lot of time not thinking about that.
Yeah.
or does his leadership alone, does that create some edge or some
jitters?
Yeah, some jitters amongst investors.
I mean,
as far
his
as how long
lack
he's
of
going to be
diplomacy skills could lead us into a war, which could have really negative financial consequences. So, that depresses me. So I try very hard not to think about that.
Well, let me go to one of your wheelhouses, and that is when we talk about fiscal policy. I want to talk about the Fed. And I had never heard, and I'm not the oldest person in the land, but I've been around a little bit.
Just in this room.
And
this conversation.
On this block. I'm the oldest person on this block right now.
And on this show.
But talking about fiscal policy, I had never heard of a president that was so anti-chairman of the Fed. Those were things. If you're not going to reappoint her, that's one thing. But to sit out and complain and to put it out there publicly in the media, you're nitpicking at fiscal policy under Janet Yellen, and then now you got Chairman Powell, and he just took a shot at him the other day. Have you seen anything like this?
He takes a shot at his cabinet members. This is what he does. Quite honestly, you should not have been surprised.
No, I wasn't. But now think about Doc. But you're talking about a market. You're talking about comments that could literally spook the market.
He doesn't care.
Well, I don't
think sell-off.
I don't think he's spooking the market, because at the end of the day, for all of his rhetoric, he really doesn't do anything. He's not really putting his money where his mouth is. And I don't think he really understands the whole relationship of the Fed to the economy and the rate of loan interest.
Come on.
I don't think he really understands
that.
If he doesn't,
you heard that first year, folks, on Funky Politics on the KUDZUKIAN Network.
If he doesn't understand,
but whether he understands it or not, he still can do damage.
Of course he can do damage.
So,
And I think what he does a lot of times, he throws out these barbs at these stabilized institutions, because he knows he has a base of people that are really conspiracy theorists and people that are so disenfranchised and disinvolved and disengaged with what goes on in the country with respect to policy, that anything that comes out of his mouth is what they're going to accept. In order for him to maintain that credibility with them, then he's got to discredit the people that have been in the institutions. So he's got to tear down the institution. That's his MO, is to break down every institution. We've seen it over and over again, that he gets out there and he talks about the Fed, or he'll get out and he'll talk about immigration policy. He has no idea what immigration policy is. Last week he was talking about South Africa. He has no discernible policy for South Africa, talking about the land acquisition program they're going through right now, the land equity program. So he's going to do that.
Can you break that down for us a little bit for our listeners, Doc? This land equity piece out of South Africa. I remember.
No, I can't, honestly. You want to talk about what's out of my bailiwick? Is
that not in your wheelhouse? Because the funny thing about it, I remember I wasn't there, but I remember maybe 30 or 40 years under the Rhodesian government that they took all of this land, right, from black farmers, correct?
Exactly.
And then they redistributed it amongst the Afrikaners.
Right.
And so now, are they talking, and we can just have a little discussion about it, are they talking now about interrupting that old policy?
The ANC, roughly, and I would say roughly.
And that's great.
The ANC is trying to reverse the policy because they realize that a very small segment of the population, something like 4%, controls 80% of the property. And it's going to be impossible for there to ever be any real wealth amongst black South Africans if you don't have any property.
So Doc, let's come back across the shores to America. And we have people who believe that they're disenfranchised, and you have an occupant of the White House who seemingly on a day-to-day basis tweets out his disconcern for their disenfranchisement. Where are we going with this thing here? Are we going toward 2020, and you're going to have a very excited base that says that I'm going to get out and I'm going to send this guy packing, or do you think he will keep his base and then I heard somebody told me 36% of African Americans are for the president right now. I can't believe that.
I've seen no polling to support that.
Nothing. Who told you?
I think it was out. I saw it on Twitter or something today.
Well, don't believe everything you see on Twitter.
Fake news.
I told you to stay away from the corner grocery. I told you that before you.
I would say who gave me that information, but I'm not going to.
Don't tell us. Don't embarrass.
Yeah.
But you get that? Do you get that, Doc? I mean,
I actually think before we get to 2020, we're at the midterms, right?
Yeah,
so
that's right.
Are the 2018 midterms going to turn people out to vote, or are the Republican legislatures going to do things to depress the vote?
Well, I've already seen one. Yeah.
That's the issue. But I think right now you see in many of these elections, people are excited. Their turnout is higher than it's been in the past, and it needs to. People need to vote if they don't like what's going on.
Well,
Not complain, but vote.
Well, down the road, we want to have a conversation about some of those races that are around the country that have been bellwethers to one party over the other, and I want to talk about that in a minute. But I want to keep on this jobs piece, right. Doc, on this employment piece, and that's what my major concern is right now. We see in some of our communities in the South where they're talking about there's plenty of jobs out there, but I see people that look like me that are not being employed in those jobs that are
right.
15 and 16, 17, 18, $20 an hour, and I still see people making $7.50. How do we juxtapose that? I mean, they'll say, well,
black unemployment is at its lowest that's ever been.
Yeah, but you're still telling me that it's at its lowest.
Well, here's the thing: you can look at national, all the unemployment numbers, and you can look at it by segments, right? So I told you, with respect to black college grads, the unemployment rate of blacks is twice what it is of whites. So
sure.
There are segments where, even if you've got a college degree, there's like 10% unemployment of black engineers, right? So we've got Silicon Valley that says, oh, we really want to diversify, but we can't find any. Yeah, okay, but we have black engineers that have I think 10% unemployment rate. So,
Gosh.
We have a labor market, I argue, that's anti-black.
Right.
Wow.
How do you
that's a major
fix
statement.
that? There have been research, for example, Gaddis is the scholar's last name, who they sent out resumes of prospective black and white candidates who went to various colleges, including Harvard. And what they found is if you were black and if you were a black Harvard grad and you sent out your resume, you had to send out more than if you were white, the Harvard grad. In fact, your number of resumes that you had to send out before you got invited to an interview was comparable to a white college grad from a less selective institution.
I'm not going to even ask you to restate.
No,
You're telling me that a Harvard, an African-American Harvard grad, with let's just say a degree in because
they made up degrees, economics or whatever,
sure.
Right?
We all know that a Harvard education with an economics, what can you do besides count real well, or even forecast how to count? But my point simply is this: that white male or female will get employed at a greater rate or less, I guess you could say. It wouldn't take as long to get him employed as it would an African American person.
That's true. So a Harvard degree. The labor market looks at a Harvard degree differently, whether you're black or white.
Sure.
That's number one. Number two, the labor market, the job interview offers to black Harvard grads were for lower paying, less prestigious jobs.
Mercy.
So then how would you, in your best Emory University professorial prose,
I like the way he said that,
how would you categorize the unemployment situation? The second sentence that needs to be uttered, because after Sarah Huckabee Sanders or Donald Trump or whoever it says black unemployment is at its lowest, but what's to qualify that now?
But black unemployment has never equaled the white unemployment rate. There's always been racial bias in the labor market that results in a higher black unemployment rate than a white unemployment rate.
Can I add one more sentence for you? I would say
no. I'm messing with you.
I like that.
Okay, then I started my own then, and I would say that in addition to that, the wealth opportunity for African Americans is still considerably lower than that of whites. Because if you're telling me that of course we can all be employed, but we're all employed at White Castle, that does not help any of us if we're trying to build a culture of wealth.
No, when you're a worker,
right,
you know, the IRS comes for you early and often.
Yeah.
Early
when
and
your
often.
wealth makes wealth, like your stock investments,
Sure.
the IRS, the law says you get to pay less taxes.
And that's what it comes down to.
So was that a pun intended, White Castle? But anyway.
No, actually it wasn't, but it turned out all right.
It did.
Because right now we don't make any money. The only
Right.
the only person we can hire is Jerron.
Is Jerron still out with the coffee?
Jerron,
Look,
no, I think the White House is calling for him.
Whatever.
He doubles with
We want our listeners to stick around. We're going to come right back with Dr. Dorothy Brown out of Emory University, Atlanta, Georgia, right here on Funky Politics on the KUDZUKIAN Network.
We got the funk. Funky Politics on the KUDZUKIAN Network.
Artivism, Funky Politics, R&R on Sports, Neighborhood Connect, Blues in the Basement, Riffin' on Jazz. Your three black chicks, best in blue. KUDZUKIAN, KUDZUKIAN.
KUDZUKIAN. Politics is what we do. We just make it funky.
Funky fresh with my body so melodic. This beat rolls right through my chest. Everybody, Martin Poppy came to party. Grab somebody.
We're back with you right here on Funky Politics on the KUDZUKIAN Network. I'm DC, sitting right here along with Doc Ward, and we're having a wonderful conversation with Dr. Dorothy Brown, law professor out of Emory University, Atlanta, Georgia, national political analyst, and an author, by the way, too. Doc, what's the name of that work that you're working on?
So the book I'm writing is called The Whiteness of Wealth, and Crown Publishing is the publisher.
So when will it be out there for us to possibly get a copy? And I'd like to get my free signed copy that everybody always sends me.
It's not coming out for a while, but I'm in the process of writing it.
The Whiteness of Wealth. Oh,
the
wow.
Whiteness of Wealth.
And it's Crown Publishing, and I thought I heard Clan, but it is Crown Publishing, by the way.
Crown, CROWN, wonderful Crown Publishing.
Been around forever. Man.
Yeah, I think you like to drink Crown, don't you? Anyway,
anyway.
Doc, you're in a wonderful part of the country now that's experiencing, I think, a revolution, I'd like to say, in terms of black women.
A political revolution.
Yeah,
political
renaissance.
Yeah.
Black women stepping up and winning.
Yes, our mayor.
Keisha, and I say Keisha because when I was at her swearing in, she said, where else in America, besides Atlanta, could a girl that grows up by the name of Keisha be the mayor of Atlanta? That's what she said.
That's right.
I'm like, wow, I never thought about that. And then you've got a wonderful young lady down there now that's running for governor, Stacey Abrams.
Yes.
Let's talk a little bit about that. Let's chop it up about not only her, but then there's another gentleman out of Florida, Gillum, that looks really good. Andrew Gillum. We've got some other people out there who are a young lady who was just sworn in as mayor of San Francisco.
Yes.
So we're seeing this all over the country now.
Yes.
What do you attribute that to, Doc?
You know, we could call this a Trump backlash. That part of what's happened since the election in 2016 is so for the most part, black folks are not surprised by Trump getting elected and the negative racist things that have been happening since the election. But there are a lot of white people that are surprised because they thought we had moved past it. They thought with the election of the first black president, we became post-racial, et cetera, et cetera. Well, now people are actually seeing, this isn't the country I thought I lived in, and you're seeing a lot of coalition building across races, which is resulting in more black leadership.
What is post-racial? This term was introduced to us not long ago, and have we ever seen a post-racial society, number one, in our country, or are there pockets in this country that are seeing a post-racial society?
No, I mean, post-racial basically says race doesn't matter anymore. We've moved beyond it. And this is America, and we've never moved beyond it.
Can we move it beyond it, though? Can we actually come to the table and have a reconciliation? I think, Doc, we've talked about this before. Come together somewhere, y'all, and just say, look, we're going to accept the fact that our forefathers did this. If you can accept the fact that I'm not my forefathers and I want to learn from you, I want to be able to live next door to you. And I think that's what it comes down to. If you can live next door to me, I think going to school with my kids and you and I sitting down having a beer or a wine together is just the next step, right? And I think that's when we get into that post-racial
Well,
piece,
first
right?
of all, we don't live next door to each other, and we don't want to live next door to each other. Or I should put it this way. Whites like to live in homogeneous white communities, and blacks like to live in racially diverse communities. So we don't want to live next to each other. So that's a problem.
But I got a question for you there. Is that actually true? Is it that African Americans don't want to live in diverse communities? Or do they want to live in homogenous communities?
That. There are sociology studies that have basically asked black people, shown them pictures. You know, here's a neighborhood, it's all white. Here's a neighborhood, it's all black. Here's a neighborhood, it's racially diverse. And what you find is whites are more likely to pick the all-white neighborhood, and blacks are more likely to pick the racially diverse one.
I agree with A, but I guess I have an issue with B because
you can have an issue all you want.
Yeah,
that's what the research.
That's just what the research says.
That's why we got you on the show, because you can tell me off, and then I can come back and say, well, look, I look at it this way. I grew up in an African American neighborhood, best time of my life.
But it was middle class.
I wish my kids did the same.
But it was middle class.
That's why I'm saying I understand it's middle class.
Now, you
but you realize, what did I say? I said most blacks pick that. Most whites. I didn't say 100%
no,
blacks, 100% are whites, right?
Yes, that's right.
So the fact that you may prefer an all-black neighborhood doesn't mean most blacks do.
I think if the neighborhood were nice, were the same type, same housing, same everything else, African Americans would prefer it. I don't believe that.
So here's why you're wrong. And it's Maria Kreisen, who's a sociologist out of UIC, who've done these studies. Literally,
UIC is
University
of Illinois at Chicago.
Okay. Oh, Chicago.
Who've done these studies?
The brain
with
factory
videos.
Okay.
And the neighborhoods are normalized. The only difference is who's in them: white people, white and black people, all black people.
And when black people chose the diverse neighborhood, what did they say the reason was?
You know, I don't know if they debriefed them or if they just had them vote on which picture.
Yeah, you got to debrief them because I believe.
No, you don't. Here's the thing. No, you don't. Your point is more black people. No, your point is black people prefer black neighborhoods over racially diverse neighborhoods. And I'm saying, except I've got a ton of research that proves you wrong.
I think they would if the neighborhoods were the same. Now, I think most blacks now don't.
The neighborhoods are the same. That's what the video experiment did. Okay. They know how to do this.
But they never debriefed the people.
The same.
But they never debriefed.
Well, let me jump in because you guys. I don't want to lose this. But let me say this. I grew up in a very black neighborhood in South Memphis, and we were considered folks who had the least of means. And I think from even in our own culture, we have this social stratification, Doc, whereby I don't mind living around my people, as some of us will say, but they got to do this, they've got to do that, they got to make sure. So aren't we boxing out? Aren't we doing the same thing as the other side over there, though?
So I'll tell you this.
Yeah.
So there were 3 neighborhoods: homogeneous white, racially diverse, all black.
Okay.
The ranking was more blacks preferred the racial diverse neighborhoods. Their second choice was the all-black neighborhood. Their last choice was the all-white neighborhood.
Wow.
Sure.
Right here on Funky Politics on the KUDZUKIAN Network.
Was this all? Do you know what city this was in?
I'm pretty sure. Well, it was videos of a neighborhood.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I see. Oh, I see.
So they gave all the social class cues, and it was really high social class cues, right? So, but the only difference were the people in the videos.
Well, I'll tell you what. Let's jump to this piece. I want to make some projections. I want to talk about, and I don't mean to cut this one off, but I want to talk about the chances of a Stacey Abrams and what it means to the state of Georgia, number one. But then after that, what it means to this country and to black girls, because I think it's important that if this occurs, that there is going to be a whirlwind, and I'm hoping that these young ladies that we see who are caught up in sometimes in very odd circumstances will see that, wow, not only a girl named Keisha can be mayor, but a girl named Stacey can be governor. Mm-hmm. Right, Doc? So tell me, are we there? Are we almost there? Do you think that she's got a chance in Georgia?
I do. I totally do. She has crisscrossed the state and continues to do so. She brings a really positive message. She's stayed positive, even though her opponent has not. Sure. I think she connects with people. So, yes, I totally think she's got a shot.
And let's go down to Florida. Andrew Gillum. And of all the states, guys, I think that Florida almost mimics Georgia because you don't have a large, I would say over probably 10 or 13% of the population is African-American, right? So in Georgia, what are we looking at? Atlanta is the major pocket, maybe somewhere down toward Valdosta. Other than that, you got what, central? Well, I guess north. I guess it'd be North Georgia, and maybe a little bit down toward the south of large pockets of African Americans. So she's got to branch out there and get those independents and some of those right thinking white
She's
Republican
always done
females.
that. She did that
Sure.
in the primary. She's doing it in the major election.
And the same thing, what I think with Gillum in Florida, he's got to get that pocket around Central Florida, down there in the Miami-Dade area as well, and then he's got to make some inroads in North Florida, Tallahassee, Pensacola,
and
which
he's
is
going to
considered.
have to, I'm assuming, make inroads in the Latino community as well.
Yes,
I think that's it. And
that's when we have worked together. That's
and
when
then
we
that
work
area
together.
east of Tallahassee, whatever's left east of it, that right there on the coast.
So do you see? What do you think? And I know I'm not going to ask if you handicap Florida yet, but what do you think?
I think he's got a shot. I mean, yeah, I think he's got a shot because I think he's got a candidate on the other side who is prone to imploding. So I think he has a shot.
but and, the odd thing about it is, I'm not so sure about his heritage, but I'm pretty sure he's not straight European, right? So
who's this?
DeSantis.
DeSantis.
Oh.
So, sir,
he's in
you were one of those classes. Just so happens you happen to be Republican, but prior to that, when you were born into this particular culture that you come out of, you were considered one of those deplorables, like we were, as one of those folks that Donald Trump does not particularly like to cater to.
Although Trump,
oh yeah, of course,
supported him.
Sure. It was his pick, so to speak.
Yep, correct.
So, Doc, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I see the wheels spinning over there.
But yeah, because I'm thinking about. I mean, what's the difference between him and Marco Rubio? They're the same thing. You're going to find that you have Ted Cruz, the same thing.
Well, Marco Rubio comes out of it's Cuban descent, and for some odd reason, a lot of the folks from that area are more conservative. And I'll tell you what, when they came out of Cuba during the missile crisis, they were not very happy with a John Kennedy, right? They were not very happy with a John Kennedy. So when they settled in Florida, South Florida, they were considered those folks who were conservative, right?
But here's the thing: if you're not brown, Hispanic, or African American,
or my color,
the road to assimilation has always been easier, and it becomes something that you strive to do. I can just go just as simple as Danny Thomas, and we all know that that's not his name. That Danny Thomas dubbed as a Italian or whatever he said he was, because he did not want everyone to know that he was of Lebanese culture.
That's right.
And because they would have looked at him differently.
That's right.
But I think when you're on that side, like a DeSantis or Marco Rubio or Ted Cruz or any of those other people, where you can pretty much be quiet, not let people know your last name, it becomes a goal that you can achieve. I can try and you can try all we want to. We'll never be anything other than, as James Weldon Johnson said, blacker than 100 midnights down in the Cypress Swamp. We're African-American born, African-American bred. When we die, we'll be African-American dead. So we have to carve out our identity for who we are in our own skin and be comfortable with it. Stacey Abrams, Andrew Gillum are comfortable in their own skin.
Sure.
I listen to both of them, and I very rarely hear either one of them talk too much about being African-American. Why do you need to know I'm African American? If you have a television, you know I'm African American.
But I think a lot of us want to see that.
But talk about my fiscal policy. One thing I listened to him talk about was the amount of algae blooms that occur in the state and what that is doing to the environmental aspect of the state in terms of them being able to trade with other companies and the companies be able to come there because they're environmentally sound, and the other issues concerning the shootings that are going on there. He's talking about real issues. And that's something that Democrats across the nation, if they want to win these midterms, are going to have to do. They're going to have to talk about real issues, one, but they're also going to have to talk about impeaching Donald Trump. You can't shy away from that.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of people in the country that may not want to see him removed from office, definitely want to see him stabilized, definitely want to see him to a point to where he's not able to do all the things he threatens to do so that he can actually either govern or leave. But you've got to put it on the table, and both of them are putting it on the table, not leaving anything.
Well, let me ask you this, Doc. Because of your spaces, and you're in Georgia, and you said that you believe that she's got a pretty good chance. I mean, just I guess Atlanta. We pretty much know how probably Atlanta proper will go. Have you seen any other, or heard any other? I guess rallying calls around the state, maybe down, like I said, down toward Macon and some of the other, where white Democrats are out there beating the bushes, and because this is what it's going to come down to. White Democrats are going to have to stay with the Democrat, and you got to get those independents who've played out there for years, and you got to get some of those white female Republican who just believe, I'm going to support this young lady because I believe she's good for the state. Have you seen Stacey be able to get into any of those communities yet?
So I will tell you, I have an Emory colleague. Her name is Andra Gillespie, and she's superb with voting rights. That's the person you need to have on the show to have that conversation.
Well, we'll get her out of here.
Yeah.
But now you're in that space, and we got you. We want to hear from you.
Yeah, we want to hear from you. We
You-
asked you to come on,
Yeah.
unless you'll let us get Jerron to go and get Andra right now.
Look,
Just call Jerron. You
Leave
know he's working.
Jerron alone.
You know he's working at your office this weekend.
Jerron, we need you to
Leave
call
Jerron
Andra Gillespie.
alone.
No, this is his job. This is what he does after 5.
leave him alone.
We will leave him alone. But, we appreciate you sitting here having a conversation with us because we like to know what's happening around the country. And the only way we can do that is by talking to professionals like you who are almost like we say boots on the ground.
But I got a question, though. I got to ask.
What you got? Ask her the question.
Because I'm tired of the colloquialism. Everyone is talking about this blue wave and this democratic shift. How much of this is really a democratic shift, and how much of this, in your mind, and how much of, or in your mind, or supported by facts, how much of this is actually African Americans rising to a position of power because the whole homogenous white body politic is eroding behind Donald Trump?
I don't know. I think we are in territory that we haven't seen before, and I think we are looking at some potential coalition building that we haven't seen before.
And I think
you have white Republicans who have said, "I'm leaving my party." We are in a time we haven't seen before.
Yeah, and you have some that we thought were progressive that are saying, "I'm going to dig in my heels and support somebody that I know is not good for the country, at least if he follows any of the policy that he puts out."
Right.
Well, we've had a wonderful time speaking with Dr. Dorothy Brown out of Emory University right here on Funky Politics on the KUDZUKIAN Network.
DC and Doc Ward on Funky Politics.
It's iConversation.
Elliot Perry, otherwise known as Socks.
Man, thank you. How you guys doing?
Mr. Earl the Pearl Monroe.
Hey, thank you. Nice to be with you guys.
Glad to have Mr. Allen Houston.
Trying to stay warm up here in New York.
I hear you. Personality extraordinaire, Mr. Scoop Jackson.
I appreciate the encore.
Mr. Michael Ray Richardson.
What's up, man? Glad to be here, brother.
A 3-time NBA All-Star, the one, the only, Detlef Shrimp.
Howard Larry, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be on the show.
iConversation, the KUDZUKIAN Network.
KUDZUKIAN! DC and Doc Ward on Funky Politics.
Powered by Memphis Light Gas and Water.
Truly, Dr. Brown and the conversation we had with her really opened my eyes up to this country and some of the leaders we've had and some of the leaders that are on the forefront right now that are getting ready to take office, Doc. And we've just lost one who's an icon in our country. That is Senator John McCain, senior senator out of Arizona.
Absolutely. And for a number of reasons, he needs to be commemorated. But one that I can think of is that he's actually a central figure in this civil rights struggle that we continue to live in here in America. I can recall that when Barack Obama was giving his victory speech in Grant Park, when he became the first African-American president, John McCain, of course, his opponent during the election, was in Phoenix, trying to calm a crowd, not just of those in Arizona, but those in the United States that were actually at a point of revolt.
Yeah,
and being the maverick that he was always cast as being, he essentially told everyone, now is not a time to argue the election of the president, but now is a time to celebrate our diversity and the fact that we are making history right here in the country that was meant for everyone. And he actually, that message emanated in everything that he did. Even if it was healthcare on the floor where he's turning it down, not necessarily because he didn't agree with the plan, but because he didn't agree with the process. Yeah. Everything had to be done the way that it was intended to be, because this is a country that is founded on freedom. And if we can, the truth expressed. And if we're not free to express ourselves in a manner that is clear and concise and according to law, then how are we able to maintain this country, the greatest gift of all, citizenship here in this great experiment that we call the United States?
Wow. I tell you what, it's that time, Doc. It's that time.
To get off our heels and get on our wheels.
Yes, sir.
And until next time, we always encourage you, but we also demand and implore you that you keep it real,
keep it right,
and you always keep it funky. right here on Funky Politics.
On the KUDZUKIAN Network.
Funky Politics, recorded at KUDZUKIAN Studio, directed, produced, recorded, and distributed by KUDZUKIAN.